At the height of the celebratory dinner, my son-in-law Victor let out a booming laugh. So Arthur, still enjoying the good life of leisure. Must be grand to watch the world go by from your armchair, eh? A ripple of chuckles went around the gleaming table, everyone amused by Victor's sharp wit. Everyone, that is, except me. I simply offered a small, knowing smile. "Tell me, Victor," I mused, my voice calm. "How does it feel to realize that the leisurely man across from you is about to cut off your lifeline?" The effect was immediate. Victor's triumphant grin faltered his complexion, draining to an ashen gray, and the elegant dining room instantly morphed into a theater of impending reckoning. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. "You know, Arthur," Victor had begun moments earlier, swishing the deep crimson liquid in his crystal goblet. A gift I'd brought, of course. "Retirement truly must be the ideal state. No daily grind, no demanding clients, no genuine weight on your shoulders." I had gently placed my fork beside my untouched plate, the exquisitely prepared roast cooling steadily. Around the gleaming ebony dining table, the very one Eleanor and I had chosen with such care just last spring, the candlelight shimmered from ornate silver sconces. My daughter Eleanor had orchestrated a truly magnificent evening, all to commemorate Victor's recent elevation to Vice President of North American Sales. It certainly has its quieter charms. I had responded, observing him drain yet another substantial swig of the same vintage I'd presented earlier as a congratulatory gesture. Victor had settled back into his plush seat at the head of the table, the very spot he now claimed as his rightful place during these family gatherings. "Look, I'm not knocking your past, Arthur. A respectable career in architecture, wasn't it? But that was what, a lifetime ago. The world spins faster now. It's all about innovation, sharp turns, constant evolution. It truly takes youthful dynamism to conquer today's market." Eleanor shifted uneasily beside me, the delicate sapphire bracelet I'd given her last birthday catching the dancing flame. "Victor," she interjected softly, "Father built incredible structures. His designs are still admired." Right. Victor waved a hand airily, cutting her off. "But let's be brutally honest. When was the last time you genuinely created something, made a tangible mark, achieved something truly substantial?" My granddaughter, Clara, a bright-eyed 9-year-old, looked up from her half-eaten chicken. "Grandpa built me an amazing fort in the garden last spring." Victor offered a patronizing pat to Clara's head. "That's charming, sweet pea. But Grandpa needs to grasp that true providers build their legacy through relentless effort and personal ambition. Not everyone has the luxury of drifting through their later years while others shoulder the burden." The quiet that descended then was thick with unspoken tension, broken only by Eleanor's strained, almost imperceptible laugh. "Perhaps," Eleanor ventured, her voice a little too bright, "we could discuss something more pleasant. Clara, tell Grandpa about your new dance routine." But Victor wasn't deterred. His recent promotion seemed to have puffed him up, and the fine wine was emboldening him further. "Actually, I've been considering something significant. Now that I'm earning what one might call serious money, well into 7 figures, Arthur, it's only fair that everyone starts contributing their fair share." I knew precisely what he was insinuating. 15 years of silently covering their lavish mortgage-funding private school fees, settling luxury car leases, and discreetly clearing exorbitant medical bills. 15 years of observing Victor squander funds as if they were endless, while I, the supposed idler, quietly filled every gap. "Take Eleanor, for example," he continued, gesturing grandly towards my daughter. She's been out of the professional sphere for so long, sustained by, well, let's simply call it familial benevolence. Perhaps it's time she re-engaged with the actual demands of society. Eleanor's face visibly whitened. She understood, as I did, that their entire upscale existence was predicated upon my unacknowledged financial infusions. The elite academy uniforms meticulously hung in the hall closet, the monthly payments on Victor's high-end sports car, the state-of-the-art kitchen renovation completed last autumn, all utterly unattainable without my silent backing. My 12-year-old grandson, Leo, sensed the spiraling tension. "Are we in trouble, Dad?" He whispered, his eyes wide. "No, son, but it's crucial to distinguish between genuine contributors and mere beneficiaries." Victor declared, his gaze locking directly onto mine. "Between those who build and those who—" He paused for dramatic effect. "Those who have simply resigned themselves to irrelevance." The cutting remark hung in the otherwise still air, palpable and acrid. Eleanor's hand trembled as she reached for her wine glass. The children at the table exchanged quick, anxious glances. Victor leaned further across the table, emboldened by what he misinterpreted as my meek acquiescence. "I don't wish to be unkind, Arthur," he asserted, "but somebody has to pose the uncomfortable inquiries. When was the last occasion you truly added value? When did you last experience the profound satisfaction of truly earning your position, rather than merely occupying space?" He paused, clearly relishing what he perceived as his definitive triumph. This was Victor's grand finale, his pronouncement of my irrelevance. "So, Arthur," he'd sneered, leaning back with a self-satisfied smirk, "how does it feel to merely exist on the sidelines, to be a relic of a bygone era?" The question, laced with venom, struck with the force of a physical blow. Eleanor gasped her breath, catching in her throat. Leo's fork clattered loudly against his porcelain plate. Clara, her bright eyes now welling up, began to whimper, but I remained unperturbed. I leisurely raised my water glass, taking a deliberate sip, the cool liquid a counterpoint to the heat rising in the room. Then I set the glass down with a soft click, fixing Victor with an unblinking gaze. "And tell me, Victor," I articulated, my voice a calm, unwavering current, "how will it feel when that relic no longer underwrites your entire modern existence?" The triumphant flush vanished from Victor's face, replaced by an ashen pallor, as if the very blood had deserted him. Eleanor's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with a dawning, terrible comprehension. Leo and Clara stared, their faces a mixture of confusion and burgeoning fear, as their father's smug assurance dissolved into abject horror. Oblivious, I resumed my meal, meticulously slicing a piece of roast each movement, precise and unhurried, while the dining room remained cloaked in an almost suffocating silence. Beyond the tall arching windows, twilight deepened over the affluent estate, and the distant lonely bark of a neighbor's hound echoed the sudden chill that had permeated our elegant gathering. After what stretched into an uncomfortable eternity, I dabbed my lips with the linen napkin. I rose from my chair, a serene figure in a tableau of unraveling composure, and offered Clara and Leo a gentle kiss on their foreheads. "Eleanor," I stated, my tone even, "thank you for the splendid dinner. It was truly exquisite." Without another word or glance back, I strode towards the main entrance, retrieved my cashmere overcoat from the ornate hall closet, and stepped out into the crisp, cool air of the early spring evening. I left behind a table of frozen figures, their expressions ranging from shock to simmering indignation. The silence of my departure was deafening. The 20-minute drive back to my own much more modest home unfolded in a profound quietude. My hands remained steady on the wheel of my classic sedan, a testament to the iron will beneath my calm exterior. As I turned into my familiar drive, the automatic sensor light illuminated the path, throwing long, stark shadows across the meticulously tended hydrangeas. Inside, I hung my coat, then proceeded directly to my private sanctuary, my study. The air in there was a comforting blend of antique leather-aged paper and a faint hint of cedar. I activated the lamp on my grand oak desk, its focused beam falling upon an entire wall of custom-built filing cabinets. These weren't merely storage. They were a meticulously catalogued chronicle spanning 15 years. As an architect, precision was ingrained, and I had dutifully preserved every financial record, every wire transfer confirmation, every account statement, every invoice. Now it was time to quantify precisely what occupying space had truly entailed. My fingers found the drawer clearly marked 2009-2012, initial subventions. Inside, a spectrum of color-coded folders awaited cobalt for residential support, emerald for vehicle procurements, canary yellow for educational endowments, and crimson for health care expenditures. My beloved wife, Martha, had passed in the autumn of 2008, and by the new year, Eleanor's predicament had become apparent. The very first entry, a wire transfer for mortgage assistance dated January 2009, a sum of $3,200. February, another $3,200. And so it continued. I methodically spread the crisp statements across the polished surface of my antique mahogany desk, the figures aligning into grimly consistent columns under the lamp's glow. $3,200 month after month for the past 180 months. My calculator's display flashed a staggering total for just the mortgage alone, nearly $576,000. Next, I pulled the verdant folders, Victor's parade of leased luxury vehicles, Eleanor's succession of high-end SUVs, a conservative average of $900 per month for each for the last 15 years, an additional $324,000. The numbers ascended relentlessly, each opened folder, unveiling yet another facet of the unspoken generosity I had extended, a generosity they had long taken for granted. A dedicated drawer overflowed with canary yellow folders detailing the children's private academy tuition. Leo's journey from kindergarten through middle school, Clara's from pre-kindergarten to upper elementary. Elite institutions boasting Olympic-sized pools and exclusive language immersion programs. An average of $28,000 annually, often supplemented by exorbitant fees for international summer camps and specialized enrichment programs. That alone accounted for over $400,000 across their combined years of schooling. Then came the crimson files, substantial medical insurance premiums, during Victor's frequent employment gaps, specialized pediatric dental care for the children, numerous urgent care visits, and Eleanor's discreet therapy sessions following the marital crisis several years prior. Each heavy manila envelope was a testament to hundreds of co-payments, complex insurance declarations, and full invoices I had consistently settled without question. An estimated $10,000 each year for 15 years, accumulating to $150,000. Tucked among the healthcare records, I discovered a treasure trove of leisure receipts for the family's annual pilgrimages to luxurious destinations like the Caribbean in 2016 or the Swiss Alps in 2019. There were also records for lavish holiday gifts, unforeseen vehicle breakdowns, and the substantial deposit for Eleanor's designer kitchen refurbishment. Adding it all up, an additional $60,000 represented countless other discrete contributions, emergency funds, unexpected home repairs, and personal loans that were never repaid. The grand sum, a staggering $1,510,000, caused me to lean back slowly into the aged leather of my armchair, the sheer weight of the number settling upon me. For the first time since Martha's passing, I felt the profound magnitude of the vow I had made at her deathbed. "Don't you worry about Eleanor," I had whispered, my voice raw with grief, to my beloved fading wife. "I'll ensure she is cared for, truly secure." I could still vividly recall Eleanor's heartbroken sobs at the funeral, her hand clutched in mine. At her initial wave of panic about the exorbitant mortgage she and Victor had never been able to genuinely shoulder alone. How profuse her gratitude had once been, weekly calls filled with effusive thanks, parcels of homemade cookies arriving at my door, the children brought for quiet Sunday visits. When had that wellspring of appreciation dried up? At what precise moment had my quiet generosity transitioned from an unexpected blessing into an unquestioned entitlement? I retrieved my personal financial statements, stark ledgers illuminating my own profound concessions, the noticeably leaner retirement portfolio because I'd consistently deferred my own investments. The tranquil, modest, two-bedroom bungalow that served as my sanctuary, rather than the sprawling lakefront property Martha and I had long envisioned. The robust 15-year-old classic sedan resting dependably in my garage, while Victor paraded a succession of ostentatious luxury vehicles. The carefully curated travel brochures tucked away and gathering dust for holidays I never took, because Eleanor invariably required yet another infusion of funds. The cherished hobbies I had quietly laid aside. The kind woman from my church who eventually ceased extending dinner invitations, understanding my perpetual commitment to familial obligations. I had over 15 years funneled over 1.5 million of my own aspirations into their existence. At precisely 10:30 that evening, I reached for my phone, scrolling to my bank contacts. Tomorrow, I knew, would unfold into a series of rather illuminating conversations with various automatic payment departments. Sunday morning's coffee tasted remarkably different, somehow sharper, more potent. I sat at my kitchen table observing the persistent squabble of sparrows over discarded crumbs just beyond the window pane before returning to my study, where my meticulous stacks of documents waited poised and ready for deployment, like well-drilled soldiers. First, National Provident Bank answered on the third ring. "Account Services, this is Justine. How may I assist you?" Her voice was crisp and professional. "Good morning, Justine. I need to cancel all automatic payments originating from checking account 457899942S156. My voice, even and unhurried, held the same steady cadence I had employed for 40 years of complex engineering presentations. "Certainly, sir. May I have the last 4 digits of your Social Security number for verification?" The process unfolded over a methodical 12 minutes. Justine was thorough, remarkably efficient, and utterly oblivious that with each precise keystroke, she was systematically dismantling 15 years of carefully constructed financial architecture. "Those payments are now discontinued, Mr. Arthur. Is there anything further I can assist you with today? That will be all. Thank you, Justine." A crisp checkmark next to mortgage assistance, $3,200 a month. Next, Summit Heights Insurance required a supervisor's override. The cancellation of Victor's latest high-end vehicle lease payment necessitated no fewer than 3 transfers. Each successive call followed the same dispassionate pattern: polite verification, impeccably efficient processing, and confirmation numbers I dutifully logged into my leather-bound notebook. By 11:15 a.m., I had meticulously crossed off 8 entries from my comprehensive list. The phone rang at 11:47 a.m. Dad, Eleanor's voice surprisingly carried more confusion than outright panic. Not yet. Something odd happened with our mortgage payment. The bank called claiming insufficient funds in the account. But that doesn't make any sense because... Her voice trailed off, a dawning realization creeping in. Because you assumed I'd simply continue covering it indefinitely. I finished for her, my tone flat, silence stretched between us, taut and brittle as a violin string. What do you mean? Her voice climbed a half octave, a thread of something akin to fear, beginning to weave through it. Precisely what I stated last night, Eleanor. I am no longer underwriting your expenses, but Dad, you can't just... The mortgage, the insurance, Leo's school tuition, all discontinued as of this morning. I could almost hear her breathing quicken a shallow, frantic sound. This isn't funny, Dad. We'll lose the house. Then you will need to ascertain how to pay for it yourselves, I replied. And with that, the line went dead. My notebook revealed 6 more calls remaining on my list. The utility companies surprisingly proved to be remarkably efficient. Evergreen Academy's accounting department asked even fewer questions than I had anticipated. Each confirmation number was added to my log with mechanical precision. Eleanor called back at 12:23 p.m. Her voice was now tight, stretched thin with genuine fear. Dad, please, I don't understand what's happening. The school called, and the insurance company, even the electric company. They're all saying our payments were declined because I canceled the automatic transfers from my accounts, Eleanor. Your accounts? The question emerged as a raw, disbelieving whisper. Did you truly believe these payments materialized from thin air, Caroline? Another heavy silence, then, faintly, but we never asked you to. You never had to ask. I simply provided. We can't afford. She abruptly cut herself off. Indeed, I finished for her, my voice unwavering. That is precisely the point. At 12:31 p.m., my phone rang again. This time, Victor's voice blustered through with a forced authority. Arthur, whatever perverse game you're play, Victor's voice, thick with artificial bravado, blustered through the phone. Arthur, whatever twisted scheme you're orchestrating needs to cease immediately. You can't dismantle our family simply because your ego was bruised at dinner. This is no scheme, Victor. It's an awakening to reality, I stated calmly. I'm not dismantling anything. I am merely withdrawing the foundational support you've come to depend on. You were so eager to define failure last night. Now you may begin by settling your own accounts. His ensuing silence was far more profound than Eleanor's had been. My very last call for the day remained a scheduled conversation with my financial advisor. Tomorrow we would delve into the strategic redirection of those substantial monthly sums, now destined for my long-neglected retirement portfolio. Outside, the tireless sparrows continued their determined skirmish over scattered crumbs. Just after 1 o'clock, the afternoon stillness was abruptly shattered by the familiar ostentatious growl of Victor's high-performance sedan as it swung into my driveway. Through the living room window, I observed him exit, slamming the door with a theatrical force. Eleanor, clutching her designer handbag like a talisman, trailed behind him as they marched up my walkway, their expressions a study in indignant righteousness, convinced of their unassailable moral standing. I opened the door before they could even consider knocking. "We need to converse," I announced, my voice devoid of emotion. Victor strode past me without a trace of courtesy, Eleanor following, her eyes visibly swollen and red-rimmed. "Do come in." I remarked, to their retreating backs, a hint of dry amusement in my tone. Victor planted himself in the center of my living room, asserting his presence like a general claiming newly conquered territory. "This preposterous display of yours ends now, Arthur. You will contact those banks without delay and reinstate every single payment." "No, Victor, I will not." His face instantly flushed a vibrant crimson. "You cannot simply cut us off without recourse. There are legal obligations, implicit agreements. Show me the document." I challenged. "The contract, where I committed to perpetually finance your lifestyle." Eleanor stepped forward, her voice a fragile tremor. "Father, please consider what Mother would have wished. Don't you recall your promise at her funeral?" The invocation of Martha's name was a chilling gust, yet I had anticipated this exact maneuver. "My promise," I clarified, my voice steady, "was to help you achieve stability. 15 years and well over $1 million later, you are regrettably less stable than when we began. $1 million. Eleanor's voice was a disbelieving whisper, barely audible across the room. I walked to my study desk, retrieving my calculator and leather-bound ledger. $1,510,000, I stated precisely. That encompasses the mortgage subsidies, the vehicle leases, insurance premiums, private school tuition, countless medical bills, your lavish family vacations, and various unbudgeted emergencies. Would you prefer a categorical breakdown? Victor's characteristic bluster faltered for a noticeable 3 seconds. "That's preposterous," he finally sputtered. "We never requested that kind of sum." "You never requested anything," I countered, fixing him with a level gaze. "You merely cultivated an expectation." Eleanor sank onto my sofa, her complexion starkly pale. "But the children, Father Leo's soccer league, Clara's ballet classes, those will continue," I assured her. "But I will now administer those payments directly. No more funds will flow through your accounts or Victor's." "You can't attempt to fracture our family like this." Victor snapped, his voice sharp. "We are a cohesive unit, a team." "Indeed, Victor," I agreed, my voice calm. "And teams demand reciprocal respect. When was the last occasion either of you expressed gratitude for anything?" The question hung unanswered and heavy in the quiet afternoon air. Eleanor's tears, initially a slow trickle, soon escalated into the desperate, racking sobs I remembered from her tumultuous teenage years. "I had no idea it was so substantial," she choked out. "I truly believed you desired to help." "I did," I affirmed, "until your appreciation vanished, and your entitlement, Victor, began to overshadow it." Victor resumed pacing my antique Persian rug like a caged beast. "Fine. You demand gratitude. Thank you. There, now reinstate the payments." Gratitude. Victor regrettably does not function retroactively. His pacing ceased. For the first time since storming into my home, his expression shifted from mere anger to a genuine chilling apprehension. "What exactly do you expect from us?" he demanded, his voice devoid of its usual arrogance. "I expect you to learn to live within your means," I replied, my voice unwavering. "I expect my grandchildren to observe their parents earning what they possess, rather than perpetually expecting handouts. I expect to be treated as a father and a grandfather, not as an automated teller machine." Eleanor looked up through her tears, her face a crumpled mask of fear. "But what if we simply cannot? What if we lose absolutely everything? Then," I concluded, my tone unflinching, "you will finally experience what true failure feels like." The silence that followed stretched profound and absolute, as if even the afternoon shadows held their breath. Victor straightened his shoulders, attempting to reclaim some semblance of his corporate composure. "We shall see about this, Arthur. There are legal professionals who specialize in cases of elder financial abuse." I almost allowed myself a smile. "Please, Victor, do contact them. I would relish the opportunity to clarify how their support had in fact been a systematic leveraging of my resources for 15 years. They departed abruptly, the self-important growl of Victor's high-performance sedan echoing down the drive like a frustrated roar. I remained by the window watching their hurried exit and became acutely aware of the tremor in my hands. A profound quietude settled upon the house, vast as an ocean, now that the storm had passed. I sought refuge in the familiar comfort of Martha's leather armchair, a cherished gift from our silver anniversary, my gaze drawn to the faded wedding portrait on the mantelpiece. Eleanor's youthful radiance, Victor's earnest, almost timid expression, and Martha's gentle, approving smile beside me. I remembered a very different Victor. Back then he was with a modest financial firm driving a utilitarian compact car and addressing me with an almost deferential "Sir." "Mr. Vance," he'd told me during that initial earnest conversation, "I want you to be certain I'll cherish Eleanor and build a life worthy of her. I may not have accumulated much wealth yet, but my ambition is boundless." His sincerity at the time had been disarmingly genuine, and I had believed him. Just 2 years later, Martha was cruelly taken by a swift, merciless illness, leaving Eleanor bereft, and Victor struggling to maintain their modest home on his newly acquired entry-level salary precisely as the global economy faltered. At Martha's memorial, Eleanor had crumpled against me, her sobs racking her frame. "Father, I don't know how we'll survive. Victor's position is precarious. The mortgage—" "Hush now," I'd murmured, cradling my grieving child. "I'll bridge the gap until you both find your footing." Until you find your footing. Not indefinitely. For those initial years, Victor's gratitude was almost effusive. Heartfelt, handwritten notes would arrive. He'd spend entire weekends tending to my garden or undertaking odd repairs around the house. Eleanor would call me diligently, often twice a week, simply to check in, bringing Leo and Clara for quiet Sunday lunches. "Father, you are genuinely keeping us afloat," she'd confessed, once tears in her eyes. "We'll repay you the moment circumstances improve." The initial mortgage contribution, a few $1,000s each month. Just for a few quarters, Victor had assured me, until my promotion comes through. The assistance with vehicle payments, several $100s monthly. Only until we build some financial stability. Leo's early schooling, a substantial sum each month. Just through kindergarten, they'd insisted, to ensure he has the best start. Each just until inexorably stretched into permanence. Every temporary lifeline became an ingrained expectation. By 2012, the sincere thank you notes had vanished entirely. Victor's once helpful weekend visits devolved into sporadic appearances where he'd simply consume my expensive scotch and rail about his corporate superiors. Eleanor's once grateful calls transformed into monthly, then bi-weekly, increasingly insistent demands for additional assistance. "Father, could you handle Clara's advanced ballet classes? It's a nominal sum. Father, the children require upgraded devices for their studies. Father, our vacation rental fell through. Can you arrange alternative accommodations?" The word "please" was the first to evaporate from their lexicon, swiftly followed by "thank you." Eventually even "can you" morphed into "you must." By 2018, Victor had ceased acknowledging my financial involvement altogether. At opulent social gatherings, Victor would ostentatiously boast about their home's extensive refurbishments, the prestigious private academies his children attended, and his ostensibly self-made, prosperous lifestyle. When acquaintances admired his lavish sports car, he'd swell with pride, crediting his astute financial acumen. Eleanor inexplicably began to champion his narrative over mine. When I gingerly proposed they attempt to manage a portion of their expenditures independently, she'd respond with palpable irritation. "Father, you simply don't grasp the complexities of contemporary family life. Victor bears immense professional burdens. The children have carefully structured schedules. You cannot unilaterally upend everything simply because you feel unappreciated." Unappreciated. The word struck me with the force of a physical impact. Just last December at their extravagant holiday party, neither of them extended the slightest acknowledgement of my ongoing support. Victor, raising a crystal flute, delivered a lengthy self-congratulatory toast about his tireless dedication to providing for the family. Eleanor, meanwhile, flooded her social media feeds with images of their lavish gifts, replete with hashtags proclaiming blessed family success. I had sat alone in my modest living room that evening, contemplating their faded thank you notes from 2009, agonizing over the precise moment gratitude had calcified into an unyielding entitlement. Now, as the evening shadows lengthened outside, I understood with profound clarity what Martha would truly have desired for our daughter. Not an unending stream of enabling, but the hard-won dignity of self-sufficiency. Not boundless unacknowledged generosity, but reciprocal respect. Lingered across my manicured lawn, and from afar, a phone's insistent ring began to pierce the quiet morning. The ensuing days unfolded with a methodical, almost agonizing clarity, akin to observing a meticulously built structure crumble brick by brick. By early Monday, the digital alerts commenced their relentless assault. Eleanor's voice, when she finally reached me, at 9:45, was a reedy whisper of disbelief. "Father," she gasped, "the bank says our mortgage bounced, and there's a $75 penalty now. They're demanding $2,875 by morning." She rattled on, "Or they'll initiate foreclosure." "Foreclosure, Father." I offered no response, letting the heavy silence amplify her mounting distress until the line clicked dead. Before the clock struck noon, Victor's luxury sedan lease agency had already left 2 urgent messages concerning the missed $650 payment. Eleanor's own premium SUV, an additional $480 each month, also triggered a $50 bounce fee. Then, as the afternoon shadows lengthened their homeowner's insurance policy, simply ceased at 3, the automated payment failing utterly. Tuesday plunged them into even murkier depths. Eleanor's second call came with Victor's furious shouts, echoing indistinctly in the background. "We simply cannot cover all of this." "Father," she cried, her voice fracturing, "I've submitted applications at several big box stores and a trio of diners. Even if they hire me on the spot, the wages are $12 an hour. That's barely $2,000 a month pre-tax." It was the first time in well over a decade and a half that Eleanor was forced to confront the harsh arithmetic of their bare existence. Wednesday afternoon, I found myself driving past the ornate gates of Centura Academy precisely as school let out. Leo and Clara, their small figures distinct, stood among classmates whose tuition accounts were presumably entirely settled. The school bursar had contacted Eleanor earlier that day. $4,800 was required immediately. Otherwise, the children would not be permitted to return come Friday. Later that evening, Mrs. Peterson, my unassuming neighbor, casually mentioned hearing raised voices erupting from Eleanor's otherwise placid residence during her constitutional. "Sounds like they're having some real fiscal woes," she remarked, with a sympathetic sigh. The younger gentleman was quite vocal about maxed-out credit lines. Thursday delivered the inevitable climax. Eleanor's third desperate plea arrived at 2:15. "Father, please, I had 5 interviews yesterday, fast food, a janitorial service, even a local grocer. But they all require recent work references, and I haven't held a job since 2009. The imperious tone that had long defined her voice was utterly absent, supplanted by an inflection I hadn't heard in a generation, genuine humility. "Victor attempted to settle the mortgage yesterday." She continued her words, tumbling out. "We had $3,000 in the account, and the payment was $28.75. He made the transfer, then realized we'd be completely unable to cover basic utilities, food or fuel for the vehicles. He had to call them back and cancel it." I maintained my silence. "The luxury car lease company," she stammered. "They've scheduled a repossession for Monday. They're seizing Victor's car unless we pay $650 plus a $200 reinstatement charge." Another long beat of quiet. "Father," she whispered, her voice barely a thread, I think we're truly going to lose absolutely everything." "Indeed," I responded, my tone soft but firm. "It is highly probable." Then the tears came, great wrenching sobs that carried the same profound anguish I recalled from her more profound adolescent disappointments. This, however, was no youthful tribulation. This was the raw, unvarnished burden of adult repercussions. By Friday morning, I was back in my study, meticulously recalibrating my financial projections. The substantial monthly outlays I'd consistently made would now be diverted. First toward the long-postponed European river cruise Martha and I had meticulously planned before her illness. Then the immersive Italian culinary classes I'd always wanted to take, and a photography workshop amidst the dramatic landscapes of the Scottish Highlands. My phone chimed at 11:30. This time it was Victor. "Arthur," he began, the familiar bluster utterly absent from his voice. "We need to discuss this." "We already have," I calmly reminded him. "No, truly talk," he insisted, a strained urgency in his tone. "Like mature individuals about how we can rectify this predicament." "You mean," I clarified, "how I can rectify your predicament." A heavy silence, stretched, punctuated only by his ragged breath. "Yes." He conceded the single word, a reluctant admission. "That is precisely what I mean." At least I mused there was a glimmer of honesty at last. "Come over Sunday afternoon," I instructed. "All of you. Bring the children. What should we prepare for?" he stammered. "Reality," I stated unequivocally, and ended the call. Beyond my window, the first brave harbingers of spring were gently nudging through the thawing earth. Early Monday, my longtime friend David from the local hardware emporium rang a noticeable tremor of unease in his voice. "Arthur, I overheard something quite disquieting yesterday. Victor was at O'Malley's pub, apparently regaling patrons with tales of your sudden heartless withdrawal of support from his family. He claimed you were maliciously forcing the children out of their prestigious private academy out of sheer vindictiveness." I carefully lowered my coffee cup, the ceramic clinking softly against the saucer. "And what precisely were his exact words?" I inquired, my voice deceptively calm. "He termed it financial abandonment of innocent dependents." David recounted, laced it with a lot of corporate jargon, made it sound as though you were deliberately punishing Eleanor over some trivial slight. By Tuesday, Eleanor's aunt, Serafina, called that very afternoon, her tone laced with sharp condemnation. Eleanor says you've cast them adrift precisely when they're most vulnerable. She began, her voice tight. She was utterly distraught. And Arthur, the children are convinced their grandfather has ceased to care for them. I paused, letting her words hang. Did Eleanor happen to mention the nearly $1 million I've provided them over the past 15 years? A weighty silence ensued. What, nearly $1 million, Serafina? Mortgage assistance, vehicle leases, insurance premiums, private academy tuition, countless medical bills, even their annual luxury vacations, all provided month after month for a decade and a half. That can't possibly be accurate, she stammered, disbelief evident. I possess meticulous documentation for every single expenditure, I countered, my voice firm. The following morning, Clara called. Her small voice I instantly recognized was carefully coached. Grandfather, she began, her tone soft, almost fragile. Mother says we might lose our home because you don't wish to help us any longer. Did we do something wrong? My heart ached, a familiar pang of sorrow, yet I kept my voice steady and kind. You haven't done anything wrong, my dear. Would you like me to collect you for ice cream this afternoon? Mother says you might refuse everything now, she murmured. I would never decline the chance for ice cream with my granddaughter, I assured her. Later that afternoon at the bustling local creamery, Clara's rehearsed melancholy quickly dissolved as she excitedly recounted details of her latest art project. As I dropped her off, Eleanor observed from the bay window, her gaze surprisingly devoid of warmth. Wednesday ushered in a more pointed confrontation. Brenda Carmichael, a long-standing neighbor from the community, intercepted me in the produce aisle of the local gourmet market. Arthur Vance, she began, her voice dripping with palpable disappointment. I am truly dismayed by your actions. Her indignant pronouncement echoed across the quiet aisles. To abruptly abandon your own daughter when she's in such dire straits. What would Martha have thought? I turned to face her, my expression serene. Martha, I believe, would consider 15 years and close to $1 million to be more than ample generosity. Brenda's righteous indignation visibly wavered. $1 million, 6-figure mortgage contributions, extravagant vehicle leases, substantial insurance premiums, elite school tuition fees, all their medical expenses, even their annual luxury getaways. Would you care to examine the meticulously preserved financial records? I inquired, gesturing subtly. Other shoppers had paused, openly listening. Brenda's expression shifted, a dawning comprehension replacing her censure. Eleanor never divulged any of this, she whispered, clearly taken aback. Eleanor Brenda has a selective memory when it comes to what she receives, I stated evenly. That evening, David called again. Victor was back at the Silver Tap Room, attempting to spin his familiar narrative, but Gareth Davies was present. Remember Gareth? He handled the sale of their high-end convertible 3 years ago. And what did Gareth say? I prompted. He inquired how Victor could possibly afford a vehicle of that caliber on his stated income. When Victor started deflecting, Gareth casually interjected that he distinctly recalled you co-signing the lease. David said the entire tap room went utterly silent. Thursday morning, my old engineering colleague Philip telephoned. I've picked up some intriguing chatter at the local bistro, Arthur. I also heard your perspective from David. Do you mind if I ask you directly? Arthur? Is it true you've been supporting them for a decade and a half? Every single month, since Martha passed, I confirmed, and it was never once acknowledged. Last Christmas, Victor even delivered a lengthy toast, publicly crediting his own tireless efforts for providing for the family. And Eleanor, Philip continued, posted photos of their extravagant holiday gifts all over social media, accompanied by hashtags like #BlessedFamilySuccess. Philip let out a low whistle. That's utterly ruthless, Arthur. Friday evening, I was tending to my prize-winning hydrangeas when Mrs. Albright, a kind neighbor, approached. "Mr. Vance," she began, a slight hesitancy in her voice. "My daughter overheard some chatter at school pickup today. Parents were discussing family matters, and she mentioned that some individuals are now questioning the narrative your son-in-law has been propagating." I calmly continued watering my roses. Everyone is entitled to their own perspective. She also mentioned, Mrs. Albright continued, that you've been exceptionally benevolent towards the children over the years. "Indeed," I affirmed, "exceedingly benevolent. I adore my grandchildren." "Of course you do," she responded gently. "That has never been in doubt." Saturday morning, Eleanor's call came through her voice, a piercing shriek of desperation. "People are asking questions, Father, uncomfortable questions about finances, timelines, and documentation. You need to cease spreading these fabrications about us," she demanded. "I haven't disseminated any falsehoods, Eleanor. I have simply responded truthfully when directly queried." "You are systematically dismantling our standing in this community," she cried. "I am dismantling nothing," I stated, my voice calm. "I am merely no longer underwriting the perpetuation of a manufactured one." The line went dead. Sunday dawned under a pristine cerulean sky, carrying with it the quiet certainty that by afternoon we would all be assembled once more in my living room, though this time the community's watchful eyes seemed to settle on their predicament. The anticipated family summit, however, never materialized. By the crisp light of Monday morning, fate had already laid its cards bare. David's call, at 8:15, confirmed my suspicions. A stark foreclosure notice had appeared on Eleanor's ornate front door just yesterday evening. It was an official county-issued proclamation, stark and unforgiving. I set my ceramic mug down with deliberate precision. 30 days. They had precisely 30 days to unearth $8,625, a sum representing 3 months of neglected mortgage payments, compounded by mounting penalties and legal fees. Tuesday dawned, bringing further undeniable shifts. Eleanor's gleaming luxury SUV, a conspicuous symbol of their former ease, had vanished from the drive. In its place sat a venerable, decade-old, compact sedan. Mrs. Albright, with her customary keen observation, later remarked on witnessing Victor at the modest dealership, his shoulders visibly thumped in defeat, while Eleanor stoically completed the transfer papers. The monthly relief from that lease alone, she mused, must have been substantial, likely nearing $900. On Wednesday afternoon, during my usual visit to the local supermarket, I encountered Eleanor behind a checkout counter. She was clad in a green apron, her movements surprisingly efficient as she scanned groceries. When Mrs. Peterson, my unassuming neighbor, approached her lane, Eleanor's cheeks burned a deep crimson. "Eleanor, my dear Mrs. Peterson," chirped a note of surprise in her voice. "I had no idea you were employed here." Eleanor, without meeting her gaze, responded flatly. "Started Monday. Bag or basket." Her shift, I noted, concluded precisely at 6 that evening. Through my living room window, I observed her walk towards the aged sedan. Her shoulders, usually held with such poise, were visibly slumped, with sheer exhaustion. That evening, Leo's small voice came over the phone. Grandpa, Mom, and Dad are arguing again, really, really loud this time. About what, son? I asked gently. Money. Dad said Mom's new job hardly brings in anything. And Mom said Dad never actually earned enough, either. Then his voice dropped to a whisper. They said awful things about you. What kind of awful things? I pressed. That you deliberately wrecked everything. There was a pause, then Leo added, but then Mom started crying and said, maybe we ruined it ourselves. Thursday morning, during my constitutional, their voices carried distinctly from their house. Through the surprisingly thin walls, I discerned fragments of their heated exchange. 8 hours on my feet, for nothing but pocket change. You never truly valued what we possessed. It's your arrogance that landed us in this predicament. 15 years of handouts, and now. The argument ceased, abruptly, punctuated by the violent slam of a door and the wheezy cough of Victor's aging compact car sputtering to life. That afternoon, Clara appeared at my door, her usual bright-eyed ebullience replaced by a cloud of anxiety. Grandpa, why is everything so different these days? I settled her gently at my kitchen table, offering her freshly baked cookies and a glass of milk. What feels different, my darling? I asked. Mom's always so tired and looks sad. Dad just gets angry about everything. They keep talking about losing our house. And Leo heard them say we might even have to leave our school. How do you feel about that? I probed gently. Scared she confessed, then hesitated. But also maybe they should have said thank you more. A simple truth, profound in its utterance, from the mouth of a child. That Friday evening, deep in my study with a book, the chime of the doorbell startled me. Victor stood on my porch, utterly stripped of his customary corporate bravado. His impeccably pressed shirt was now noticeably wrinkled, his tie askew, and his face bore a profound weariness I had never witnessed before. Arthur, he began, his voice hoarse. I need to speak with you. Just us man to man. I motioned him into my living room, the very space where only 2 weeks prior he had brazenly demanded the reinstatement of all financial support. He sank heavily into the armchair, his hands clasped tightly between his knees, a picture of quiet desperation. The foreclosure. It's real. He admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. 30 days. Eleanor's working 40 hours a week at $12 an hour. After deductions, that's barely $1,100 a month. I'm bringing home about $5,800. The mortgage alone is $2,875. He finally met my gaze, a flicker of genuine humility in his eyes. We can't make it work. Not even remotely. We never could we? Not without your help, I mean. No, I affirmed softly. You never could. I've been pondering something you mentioned. He continued, his voice cracking, about earning respect versus simply inheriting it. I never truly earned any of it, did I? The grand house, the luxury vehicles, the children's elite schooling. None of it was genuinely ours. What do you expect from me, Victor? I inquired. I want to understand if there's a path forward from this. Not a return to the way things were, but a progression towards something genuinely sustainable. Outside, the first streetlights began to illuminate the deepening twilight over our quiet suburban enclave. Saturday afternoon found me immersed in the systematic organization of my financial records when my afternoon quiet was broken by the doorbell's chime. On my stoop stood Eleanor, her supermarket uniform a stark contrast to her tear-streaked, fatigued face. Father, she pleaded, her voice a raw whisper, We must discuss Leo and Clara. The woman before me seemed diminished, the brittle veneer of entitlement I'd witnessed solidify over 15 years now utterly shattered, revealing the vulnerable child who had wept at Martha's interment. I gestured for her to enter. She sank into the very armchair Victor had occupied hours earlier, her hands trembling as she unpinned the plastic name tag from her chest. "Only 4 days," she murmured the words barely audible. 4 days until the foreclosure is finalized. Leo constantly asks if we're truly losing our home. Clara was plagued by nightmares of relocating to an unfamiliar environment. "What precisely do you seek from me, Eleanor?" I inquired. "I desire for my grandchildren to possess stability. I wish for them to complete their academic year alongside their friends. I yearn for Clara to sleep soundly unburdened by fears of abandoning her room." Her gaze met mine, devoid of any calculated intent, expressing only a primal maternal anguish. "I've been on my feet for 40 hours this week, processing purchases for individuals who once moved in our social circles. Yesterday, a former acquaintance, Mrs. Albright, passed through my checkout, inquiring about my presence there. My first instinct was to retreat from sight, to vanish beneath the conveyor. But I didn't. Instead, I offered a composed smile and asked, "Paper or reusable?" Because, Father, I finally comprehend the true essence of labor, the weight of genuine earnings, everything you've patiently tried to impart. She dabbed her eyes with a crumpled tissue from her handbag. "Victor relayed details of your discussion last night," she continued. "He mentioned you inquired about a viable path forward." "There may be one, Eleanor," I conceded, "but it necessitates substantial adjustments from both of you." "Tell me," she urged, leaning forward slightly. I settled back, preparing to articulate my terms. "I will remit Leo and Clara's academy tuition directly to the Centura Academy bursar. I shall also facilitate their attire, medical provisions, athletic pursuits, and musical instruction. Furthermore, I will initiate dedicated collegiate funds for both grandchildren." Eleanor's face, for the first time in weeks, illuminated with a flicker of nascent hope. "However," I continued, holding her gaze, "I will not cover your mortgage, vehicle payments, comprehensive insurance, nor any expenses pertaining to your adult lifestyle. You and Victor will henceforth operate strictly within the parameters of your demonstrable income. Full stop. We can manage that," she responded quickly. "We'll simplify our lives, find a more modest dwelling." "There is more, Eleanor." I paused, letting the statement hang. "I require public acknowledgement of the past 15 years and the sum of approximately $1.45 million I have furnished. I demand sincere public apologies for the profound disrespect and ingrained entitlement exhibited. And I expect genuine gratitude, not merely transactional expressions when you are in a bind." Eleanor's composure faltered, her face collapsing. Victor would never countenance public apologies. His ego, Father, then his personal vanity supersedes the stability of his own children. We remained in silence as she absorbed the gravity of this declaration. "What precise form of public acknowledgement do you envision?" she finally managed. "A formal letter to the local society circular detailing my sustained support for your family and expressing appreciation for my benevolence. An unvarnished social media post outlining the decade and a half of financial assistance. And direct, face-to-face apologies to the individuals you have misled over the preceding fortnight. Should you agree to these stipulations and fulfill them comprehensively, your children will possess educational security and the enduring affection of their grandfather." Your relationship with me will be rebuilt upon principles of candor and mutual esteem. However, your standard of living will be irrevocably constrained by the income you and Victor genuinely generate." Eleanor buried her face in her hands. "I cannot predict if I possess the capacity to persuade him. You are granted 48 hours to render your decision. Subsequently, this proposition will be withdrawn." She rose laboriously, her supermarket uniform rumpled from the extended work-day. At the threshold, she paused, glancing back. "Father," she uttered, "thank you for still caring about Leo and Clara." "My care for any of you never diminished, Eleanor," I responded evenly. "I merely ceased to facilitate your dependency." As her aged compact sedan departed my driveway, I settled into my living room, the evening news flickering soundlessly on the television. I knew with a quiet certainty that a profoundly challenging confrontation was imminent across town. Eleanor's unassuming vehicle idled into their driveway precisely at 5:30 that evening. It was through the subsequent recounting by my neighbor David that I gained insight into the ensuing domestic drama. Victor, engrossed in warming up yesterday's pizza, glanced up as Eleanor entered the kitchen, still in her store apron. He looked up from the microwave. Eleanor's weary frame, framed by the kitchen doorway, conveyed a profound exhaustion. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and her supermarket apron was still tied around her waist. "Your shift ended at 3. Victor stated, his voice tight. "Where have you been?" "I went to see Father," she replied, her voice soft as the microwave chimed, signaling the pizza's readiness. Victor pulled the steaming box from the oven, setting it heavily on the counter. He turned to face her, his gaze intense. "You went behind my back after we agreed to tackle this as a team." "We're out of time, Victor," Eleanor countered, her voice strained. 4 days until the foreclosure notice becomes final. Leo and Clara are terrified. I had no choice but to try something." She collapsed into a kitchen chair, her fingers fumbling to unpin her name tag. "He's willing to extend assistance." Eleanor revealed, her voice barely a whisper. "But there are stipulations." "What kind of stipulations?" Victor demanded, his impatience palpable. "He'll cover Leo and Clara's academy tuition, their clothing, extracurricular activities, and all medical provisions," Eleanor explained. "He'll also establish dedicated college funds for both of them." A flicker of hope ignited in Victor's eyes. "That's incredible. When does he reinstate the mortgage payments?" "He doesn't," Eleanor stated, her voice flat. "We're expected to live strictly within the confines of what we genuinely earn." The fragile hope in Victor's eyes extinguished instantly, replaced by a cold dread. "That's utterly unfeasible. You know our fixed expenditures." Eleanor swallowed hard. "He also demands something else." Her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. "Public apologies. Full acknowledgement of the 15 years and the approximate $1.45 million he's provided us." Victor's face drained of color, then flushed a violent crimson. "He expects me to publicly debase myself to confess I've been what? A recipient of charity." Victor's voice was a guttural snarl. "Victor," Eleanor pleaded, "he funneled almost $1.5 million into our lives. Do you comprehend the sheer magnitude of that? It signifies he simply chose to support his family," Victor retorted, clenching his fists. "That's what a father should do." Eleanor rose slowly from the chair, her supermarket uniform rumpled and marked. "No, Victor. That's what a benefactor, a true saint, does." And we in turn treated him as nothing more than an automated money dispenser. From upstairs, Leo's small voice drifted down, laced with apprehension. Mom, Dad, why are you shouting? Both parents froze, abruptly aware of their raised voices. Clara appeared at the top of the staircase, her small figure, dwarfed by her oversized pajamas, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Are you arguing about Grandpa again? Eleanor hurried upstairs to console her daughter, leaving Victor to pace the kitchen, his hands unconsciously balled into tight fists. When Eleanor returned 20 minutes later, she found Victor fixated on the stark foreclosure notice still lying on the polished quartz counter. I refused to do it. He stated, his voice flat and unyielding, his gaze unwavering from the document. I will not stand before our peers and neighbors publicly confessing my inadequacy, admitting I failed to sustain my own family. Then what is your proposed solution, Victor? Eleanor pressed, her voice edged with desperation. Where will we reside, and where will the children pursue their education? We'll devise an alternative, he insisted, finally tearing his gaze from the notice. Secure a loan, declare bankruptcy. Anything is preferable to groveling before your father, begging absolution for perceived transgressions. Eleanor retrieved her phone, her thumb tapping open the calculator application. Very well, Victor. Let us quantify this, shall we? Her voice was eerily calm. Our collective monthly income now stands at roughly $6,900. The mortgage alone consumes $2,875. That leaves precisely $4,025 for every other essential. Her fingers flew across the screen, punching in figures. The new compact sedan payment, $350. Insurance, $250. Utilities, $300. Groceries, $600. Fuel, $200. That tallies to an additional $1,600, leaving us with $2,425. See? We can make it work. Her voice, however, held a brittle edge. And that doesn't even account for the children's necessities yet. Leo's soccer league, $120 a month. Clara's ballet lessons, $80. Not to mention school supplies, clothing, medical co-payments, birthday gifts, Christmas presents. Eleanor's voice fractured, breaking on the last word. Victor, she whispered, her voice raw with dawning horror. We cannot afford our own children. Through the thin walls, Leo's small voice wafted down once more. Mom, Clara's crying. She says we're going to be homeless. Eleanor met her husband's gaze, her eyes utterly devoid of the imperious entitlement that had characterized her 2 weeks prior, when she had demanded her father reinstate their lost payments. We have precisely 36 hours to make a decision, she stated, her voice flat with finality. Father's proposition expires Monday at noon. She turned and slowly ascended the stairs to comfort their distraught children, leaving Victor alone in the harshly lit kitchen. The foreclosure notice lay starkly on the counter, a silent testament to the impossible mathematics the calculator could not resolve. On Monday morning, precisely at 10:15, the modest compact sedan pulled into my driveway, carrying all 4 of them. Through the living room window, I observed Victor slowly emerge from the passenger side, his posture slumped, the weary burden of a sleepless night evident in every line of his body. Eleanor approached my front door, flanked by Leo and Clara, both neatly dressed in their school uniforms. Victor lingered a few steps behind his usually immaculate business shirt, conspicuously wrinkled his eyes. Eleanor, her voice a barely audible tremor, broke the stillness. Father, she pleaded, we've come to accept your terms, every single one. I motioned them into my living room. The children settled on my sofa while Eleanor took the very armchair she'd occupied on Saturday. Victor remained standing, his hand clasped behind his back, like a defendant awaiting sentencing. Eleanor, her gaze fixed on me, relayed the grim news. The bank delivered their final ultimatum this morning. By 3 o'clock, unless we produce $8,625, the process will be irreversible. We don't possess the funds. Clara tugged on my sleeve. Grandpa, are we truly going to lose our house? Not if I can prevent it, sweetheart, I assured her. Victor, after a hesitant cough, finally found his voice. He walked to the fireplace, his eyes lingering on the framed photograph of Martha and me, a silent testament to a different era. Turning to face his family, his shoulders slightly stooped, he began, "Arthur, I owe you an immense debt of truth. 15 years ago, you extended a temporary hand, and I, in my arrogance, twisted it into an indefinite lifeline, willfully blind to the depths of your sacrifice." His voice cracked slightly. "I allowed the world to believe our prosperity was entirely my own making. The renovated mansion, the fleet of luxury vehicles. I attributed it all to my financial acumen. Worse, I permitted Leo and Clara to view their grandfather merely as a benevolent figure, never as the architect of their very existence." Eleanor, her face streaked with tears, reached across and clutched Clara's small hand. "Father," she choked out, "my own failings are just as profound. I perceived your immeasurable generosity, not as a selfless gift, but as an inherent right, a perpetual inheritance, due to me." Victor, his voice thick with a new kind of clarity, enumerated, "For 15 years, you single-handedly covered our lavish mortgage totaling over $500,000. Our vehicle leases the exorbitant insurance premiums, the children's elite academy fees, every medical bill, our elaborate vacations, even their Christmas and birthday celebrations, ballet lessons, Leo's soccer league. It was all you. Every single luxury we paraded as our own was your silent contribution." Leo's eyes widened to saucers. "Grandpa paid for my soccer," Eleanor murmured. "He paid for virtually everything, a staggering sum approaching $1.5 million over a decade and a half." Clara's fragile voice, edged with bewilderment, pierced the somber atmosphere. "Why didn't you ever tell us?" Eleanor's expression crumpled. "Because we were deeply ashamed. Not of your grandfather's incredible assistance, but of our own pretense. Our insistence on acting as if we were entirely self-sufficient, as if we didn't need him." I leaned forward, my voice unwavering. "If I intervene to secure your home today, understand that our arrangement will be fundamentally transformed. I will ensure Leo and Clara's continued education at Centura Academy, remitting their tuition directly. Their medical care, clothing, extracurricular pursuits, and future collegiate funds. These I will cover. However, your mortgage, your vehicle payments, and all other adult living expenses will fall entirely upon your shoulders. You will learn to operate solely within the confines of your demonstrable income." Victor nodded slowly, a profound understanding in his eyes. "We comprehend," he stated. "And there's the final term." I continued, my gaze steady. "Public acknowledgement. A formal letter to the local gazette detailing my 15 years of steadfast support and expressing your profound appreciation. Accompanying social media posts, devoid of artifice, conveying genuine gratitude. And most importantly, direct face-to-face apologies to every individual into this community you have misled." Eleanor, her voice barely a whisper, inquired, "By when?" "Before this Saturday," I stipulated. Victor's jaw clenched, a faint flicker of his old arrogance momentarily surfacing. Then he nodded once more. "Is there anything further?" he managed. "One last thing," I stated, "monthly family gatherings here. not for financial audits, but to foster genuine familial bonds, to serve as a constant reminder that the foundation of family is mutual respect, not assumed entitlement. I rose from my chair, a sense of quiet finality settling over me, and retrieved my checkbook from the desk. "I will contact National Provident Bank immediately," I announced, "to arrange this emergency payment. But let this be unequivocally clear. This is the absolute last mortgage payment I will ever make on your behalf. From this moment forward, your financial stability rests entirely on your own earned income." As my fingers dialed the bank, I overheard Clara's tentative whisper to her mother, "Will we be all right now?" Eleanor's voice, though soft, carried an unfamiliar ring of conviction. "Yes, my darling," she responded, "we are going to be more than all right." For the first time in 15 years, a profound certainty washed over me. She was at last utterly correct. Precisely 3 months later, on the 3rd Saturday of June, they arrived at my home for our designated monthly gathering, punctual to the minute. Eleanor, I learned, had recently ascended to shift manager at the local market, her hourly wage, now a respectable $15.50. Victor, for his part, had finally mastered the intricacies of living within his means, no longer waiting for financial windfalls. "Grandpa," Clara exclaimed, bursting through my front door, her soccer uniform smudged with triumph, a gleaming medal suspended from her neck. "Look what I won at the regional tournament." "That's truly magnificent, my dear," I replied, a genuine smile gracing my lips. "Do tell me, how did you score the decisive goal?" While Clara regaled me with her athletic triumphs, Leo proudly presented his latest report card, an unbroken string of A's, accompanied by a note from his instructor commending his newfound focus and self-assurance. Eleanor then placed a worn manila folder on my coffee table. Eleanor, beaming, slid a crisp, organized folder across the polished oak of Arthur's coffee table. "Arthur," she began, her voice brimming with quiet pride, "our financial summary for the month. We've successfully covered the entire household, the new lease for the sensible sedan, the utilities, groceries, and even the restructured mortgage payment, all from our combined earnings. And we've even managed to squirrel away a modest reserve for unexpected contingencies." Victor, who only weeks ago avoided Arthur's gaze, now leaned forward, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Arthur," he began, "I actually wanted to seek your counsel on a professional matter. A significant leadership role, potentially overseeing our entire North American division, is projected to open up early next year. It would entail considerably greater executive responsibilities, a commensurate increase in some compensation, but also frequent travel." Victor elaborated. "My primary concern is ensuring Eleanor and I can seamlessly manage Leo and Clara's demanding schedules, especially if I'm away for extended periods." Arthur, in turn, opened a slim portfolio, its contents arranged with the fastidious order of a seasoned architect. "Leo's latest soccer season enrollment," he noted calmly, "was settled this morning with the City Youth League, and Clara's advanced cello tutorials are now confirmed through the Conservatory of Fine Arts. Their annual pediatric dental exams are also booked for next week, entirely covered under my personal policy," Arthur added. Eleanor's face softened, a radiant smile, gracing her lips, an authentic expression Arthur hadn't witnessed in over a decade. "Arthur," she murmured, her voice thick with emotion, "I truly cannot articulate my gratitude for the unwavering stability you've provided for their lives, particularly while Victor and I were recalibrating our adult responsibilities." And speaking of assuming adult responsibilities, Victor interjected, a trace of solemnity in his tone. "Eleanor and I have now fulfilled all the court-ordered community service. Our time at the local outreach center distributing aid to the truly destitute proved incredibly humbling. It illuminated the stark reality of genuine hardship, a stark contrast to our own superficial struggles with simply living above our means. Clara, her eyes shining, gently tugged on Arthur's sleeve. "Grandpa," she whispered conspiratorially, "can we show you the special notes we prepared?" Both children then proudly unfurled brightly decorated cards, adorned with childish drawings and heartfelt scrawls. Leo's card, in bold, earnest letters, declared, "Thank you for always making sure we were safe, even when Mom and Dad forgot how to say thank you." Clara's was sweetly direct. "Grandpa, you're my favorite. I love you to the moon." These weren't the rote recitations of coached children or apologies born of obligation. They were the unfiltered sentiments of two young souls who had, through a crucible of change, finally grasped the true meaning of genuine affection and unwavering support. "There's one more thing," Eleanor stated softly, her voice infused with thoughtful consideration. "Victor and I have begun discussing the long-term prospect of acquiring a more modest residence, something genuinely within the scope of our earned income. Not right away, perhaps within a year or two, once we've established a more robust financial cushion. It's about demonstrating true self-reliance," Victor affirmed, nodding in quiet accord. "Not because we undervalue your continued assistance with the children, Arthur, but because we recognize the immense generosity you've already extended and need to honor that." As the afternoon's gentle light began to fade, Leo, with the directness only a child possesses, voiced the question that resonated with the weight of their journey. "Grandpa," he asked, his gaze earnest, "are you proud of us now?" Arthur surveyed his quiet living room. His daughter, no longer burdened by artifice, embracing the inherent dignity of honest labor. His son-in-law, having shed the mantle of false pride, now prioritizing his family's genuine welfare, and his grandchildren blossoming with a newfound understanding of authentic appreciation. "Yes, Leo," Arthur replied, his voice soft with emotion. "I am immensely proud of each and every one of you." For they departed as the sun dipped below the horizon. Clara's small hand clasped securely in Arthur's as he walked them to their vehicle, the dependable, well-maintained, compact sedan that had replaced the ostentatious luxury model. Yet this vehicle no longer seemed like a symbol of reduction, but rather an emblem of prudent decision-making and genuine progress. As their taillights faded into the twilight, Arthur's thoughts drifted to Martha. She would have approved, he knew, not of the financial interventions or the strategic dismantling of their illusions, but of the profound metamorphoses within his family. Where arrogance once reigned, humility now thrived. Where self-serving exploitation had festered, genuine affection and mutual esteem now flourished. The rectification he had orchestrated wasn't about punitive measures. It was about profound, restorative change. And in that quiet triumph he found the most exquisite form of vindication.